Combine kicks off. Chiefs get some much-needed information today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
And welcome back to another episode of Locked On Chiefs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Thank you all for listening, and thank you for making this your first listen of the day. We do truly appreciate that. Go check out another show, maybe Locked On NFL Draft. They're doing a lot of great work right now, Locked On NFL. Lots of different things going on around the NFL. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network in the United States. So thank you for helping make us that. And if you aren't already, go check out our Everyday Club at lockedonchiefs.supercast.com. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. There's a ton to talk about. The combine is going on. We finally got some measurements that we have been talking about for the past couple of weeks. And the teams all have that information now. And now it's just time to start getting into the specifics of what's going on at the combine, who stood out. I'm Chris Clark from Chiefs Corner. That is Ryan Tracy from NFL 33, Rogue Analytics, and RGR Football. A little bit later in the show, we're going to be talking about the standouts on the field. The next segment, we're going to talk about some of the eye-popping performances that have already started to happen at the combine. But we're going to jump into starts with misses and talking about some of the players that have come out with their measurements that are probably going to take them off of some teams' board on draft day.
Yeah, there's a couple that fall into that category, and nothing's a huge surprise, to tell you the truth. We had heard rumors about some of this. Both Reuben, Bain, and Cassius Howell come in under 31-inch. Not feeling good about that, although I do want to say that I thought Howell was just a touch over that, so I'm going to double-check that while we're talking. To
be clear, Myles Garrett, I think, is over 35-inch arms. So
yeah, I think it's 35 7/8 if I remember correctly. But yeah, it's significant. It is not a little bit. Cassius Howell, 30 inches and quarter, 30 inch and a quarter. I mean, barely longer than Trent McDuffie's arms. That's what we're talking about here. Now Cassius plays like his hair's on fire. He plays with a lot of power. In fact, I think he's one of the guys that is under discussed at this point. You get a lot on Bain, on Bailey, as you should. The best two pass rushers in this class. You get a lot on Messidor, but you don't see a whole lot of Howell. And Howell's up there with Messidor and TJ Parker for me in my second tier. And I do think that he deserves a little bit more here. But both those guys are going to face some challenges. They are undersized. They're a bit at a disadvantage. But especially Bain plays with a lot of power. Cassius Howell plays with a lot of power as well. He doesn't quite have, for being a similar size, he doesn't play with as much leverage as Bain does. Bain has a little bit more violence in his hands that actually puts him in a better leverage position after initial contact. And I do think that's a big part of his game. I would say I'm disappointed too. I didn't get to see my guy, Skylar Gill-Howard, who is also a rather shorter shorter arm guy, but he's a tackle. He's not an edge, so I'm not near as worried about it. And so it comes down to how you use your body as much as anything else. But people were disappointed. I'm disappointed with a couple of non-participants, like Peter Woods. Wanted to see him moving around out there with a bunch of others. And it's a little bit of a ho-hum, to tell you the truth. Defensive line group, especially this year for us, was the premier day. This is the day the Chiefs needed to get business done and get some answers. And I just don't feel like, at least so far, it's come to pass.
Yeah, and I know this isn't specifically Chiefs related, but I do want to throw out there was a big trade in the NFL that will happen at the start of the new league year. Jermaine Johnson is traded to the Tennessee Titans for Sweat, the defensive tackle. And the reason I mention it and the reason it does apply here is because it's going to affect probably who the Jets are going to be looking at number 2 overall, right above the Chiefs. Now you have to think they're going to be taking a defensive end. So one of those guys that is one of those top players is probably going to be a defensive end that's going number 2 to the Jets. So it does kind of play into this. It's fascinating to me to see how much this combine is continuing to shift. because the reality is that this used to be the premier event where all these players wanted to come and they wanted to show what they could do. They wanted to get out there, show their speed, show their agility, show their ability to move and do the explosiveness and whatnot. Now you're in a situation where you're dealing with most of these players trying to maybe show up and do a couple of things, but the bigger name players that you really want to get information on, they're probably waiting for their pro day. And that's not a great situation for the NFL, mainly because it's not all going to be set up the same way. Like, yes, a 40 is a 40 is a 40, but the track matters. Like, all of that information is different. How people are getting time versus how they're getting timed at the combine could be a little bit of a difference. I know we're just talking about specific measurables like that, but there's even a report out there from Adam Schefter that some of these players are going to get remeasured at their pro days and the measurements will be looking different. That's fascinating to me, because how is that possible? They're not going to grow between now and the
home field advantage, buddy. It's all about who does the tape with what.
Exactly. That's the problem.
It certainly is. And to your point, I think you bring up something very, very important. There will be guys that get kudos points. It might not be as big a differential as it used to be, but there will be guys who get points with teams because they showed up and they fully competed today. One of them is now my favorite to go to the Jets. David Bailey showed up and didn't miss a beat, did it all, left absolutely zero questions out there. And if you're a guy that is right up there at the top and it's kind of 1-2, whatever, show up and put yourself out there. And I think most teams respect that. Most teams look for that. That shows you want to go compete. And I think that's something that honestly has been lacking in New York, especially with the guy that they just got rid of. And I do think that that's something that can help change their culture as well. So it even makes Bailey more attractive to me if I'm anyone inside the organization in the Jets park. But I feel bad for David Bailey because it looks more and more like he might end up there.
Yeah, well, and that's possible that he will end up there, and at least he will have Tavon Sweat with him to help him on the defensive line a little bit. But that still is a big trade in the NFL. And the other thing that's interesting about that trade to me is how often do you actually see a one player for one player trade? You almost never see that. Now, you have a new coaching staff in Tennessee. They're bringing in a guy that they think they can work with, and they're getting rid of somebody that they don't think fits their system. That's fine. I thought Sweat would be a good addition to be, that one tech for the Chiefs. But obviously that's not going to be something that will be happening now. Although look at what happened last year. The Jets went and made a move for, brought in Derek Nottie and then ended up trading him away mid-season. So who knows? Who knows what the Jets will do? We will see. But when we get back, we're going to start talking about some eye-popping performances that actually happened on the field for the combine. That's coming up next.
If you ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person, FanDuel is giving you the chance to earn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost from any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you've already looked at the board and that you're thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to look into it as we talk about it right now. I love the futures game because whether you're picking a team to win a championship or just grab a conference style, the extra layer of excitement in every single game, it really plays up down the stretch, and that's when you want to get the most out of it. Visit FanDuel.com today and get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sportsbook betting partner of the NBA.
All right, so when you start looking at some of the eye-popping performances, obviously, as you said before, you got some measurements that are going to maybe take some players off the board. But now you have a scenario where you could have guys that are jumping up boards because of things that teams didn't expect. What did you see from the performances today?
I'll tell you, a couple stood out to me. And I was not happy that Caden McDonald didn't do much in terms of the testing. He didn't participate. He is my number one defensive tackle in this league, and I think he showed a lot of that on the field workout. He was smooth. He moved well. You saw him be able to change his pad level, or in this case, his shoulder zebra unit pad level, whatever you want to call it. because he looked dynamic. And I think without all the pads on and without that, it kind of gives you a little bit more idea of what the athlete is just by himself. And I thought Caden McDonald held up really, really well there with the DT group. The other guy was Lee Hunter. My number 1 and number 2 tackles at this point. Very disappointed that Peter Woods didn't show up, do much. I thought that was a missed opportunity for him. I think that he needs to show some of that. I thought those two guys in McDonald and Lee really took a step forward in solidifying themselves in the top group. Zane Durant had a very good athletic showing. He is another guy that is built. What did he come in at? 31 7/8, 290, 6'1". Very similar to my guy, Gil Howard from Texas Tech. Very much like the Turk Wharton kind of undersized, get after it, play with low leverage kind of guys. And I thought that he timed super well. He came off the ball really nicely. I think he was one of, if not the lowest, he was the lowest 10-yard today by any defensive tackle. Came off at 166 that you see edge rushers come off at. That is a great time for him. When you got to the edge group, I thought there was a lot of other guys, but I thought you got a little bit of undersized guy and a lot of bit of the 2 or 3 at the top that really solidified themselves as options at the defensive tackle spot.
Yeah, and it's going to be fascinating to see what continues over the next couple of days because obviously we're talking defensive alignment, which is a huge deal for the Chiefs this year. It should be something that they're focusing on because I can't see them being huge players in the defensive end or defensive tackle market when free agency starts here in a couple of weeks. So the draft is the way to go there. Is there anybody else that you think that had an eye-popping performance or some kind of measurable or run or of some sort that really stood out?
Yeah, there were several on the edge group as well, and I kind of cut those into those 2 areas. Malachi Lawrence, really, he was already a day 2 grade on my board. He set himself apart with the athleticism, came off at a 10-yard at 159, plus a 40-inch vert and nearly an 11-foot broad. Really, really substantial. That is athleticism you don't see every day. Romello Height came off very well. Same kind of thing. Maybe the best run around the hoops today of anyone. He's also a fringe top 100 guy. I do think he's more of a third round part of day 2. But both those guys made some headway. I thought TJ Parker looked smooth, although he didn't have the measurables, especially in the 40. Like you can see how after you take like 4 or 5 steps, how guys start to slow down. But he came off nearly as quickly at a 1.6, 110 that you really wanted to see. And as much as I thought there was a disparity between the 3-4 outside linebacker types from the 4-3 end types, I thought some of that started to compress today with some of these performances.
Who are you excited to continue to watch over the next couple of days? Because there is probably going to be a lot of different players that are going to be out there.
I'm starting to feel like I'm close, but I might be a little low on Lawrence, who's a little. I think he's around the 55-60 mark for me. I have to go back and watch a little bit more of him. Keldrick Flock looks great running around in shorts. He doesn't bring that juice to the field. And I know there's got to be something on the film that tells me he can get back there. Right now, I haven't seen it. But he's not alone. Both the Clemson guys, Peter Woods, as well as TJ Parker, had better 24s than they had 25s. And so you have to build that into the evaluation as well. And if you get athleticism here that you know you can produce, and then you try to pair that to on-field production, sometimes there's a disconnect. And for Parker in particular, had a great 24, really slow 25. Now, that wasn't the greatest defense, I have to say. He did pick it up towards the end, and he did pick it up at the Senior Bowl. So I think it bodes a little bit better for him than maybe it does for Woods. I thought Kieran Crawford gave himself a little bit of a boost as well. Good athleticism, moving around on the field drills. That's got to help. And there was one more guy in that second group that I thought really set himself apart. I got way more out of Max Wellen from Iowa than I expected. So, hey, kudos for him. I think he was a fringe 4th, 5th guy for me. He may move up a little bit too, probably not a ton, but he looks like the athlete that can maybe make the adjustment, much like some other guys have. that are under length or undersized or underweight.
Yeah. Now, when you start looking at how this is going to play out, you have all these players that obviously you have all the tape. You're trying to figure out, okay, does the tape match what their measurables are? Does the tape match what you see in explosiveness, what you see in their speed, what you see in, their height, their weight, their arm length, for especially, those types of things are huge for defensive linemen. So those are the types of things that you want to see. I'm going to be very curious over the next couple of days how that changes with the different position groups. But, the defensive line, like I said, is one of the biggest focuses. When you start looking at this and how it applies to Kansas City, do you see something that maybe sticks out to you that maybe you wouldn't have thought of? Oh, well, maybe this guy does fit a SPAG system that I didn't think maybe did before, based on measurables.
Based on measurables alone, I will say this. There was only, by my count, 2 guys that measured in at 35-plus inch arms, which is usually a Spag's kind of like sweet spot. He really likes you. On the defensive tackle spot, it's Caleb Banks, who I think also doesn't bring enough juice for me, doesn't come off the ball the way that I want. I know he had up and down and did finish a little bit up towards the end of the season, but I don't know if that's enough. In terms of other measurables that really stood out, there's a couple like Tim Keenan. You can't really judge him for having a 1.8 3.10, right? And he's only got an 8.4 broad jump. He's not an explosive player. He's upper body strength. He's leverage and technique. He's going to sit as that nose and dominate the fact that you have to give him 2 guys. And for the Chiefs in this particular situation, that allows Chris Jones to have a one-on-one, and that could be money in the bank.
Interesting. You mentioned Tim Keenan, who we've actually drafted in one of our mock drafts just a little bit ago. So something to watch out for there. If you haven't already, go check out our new mock draft segments that we're doing. They're 10 minutes a day. A lot of fun to do those. And when we get back, we're going to be talking a little bit more about some of the on-field standouts for today's combine right after this.
Welcome to the 5-Hour Energy Flavor Draft. We're looking at every aspect of the draft to let you know which tasty flavors are the best and which ones might be sleepers. The board is set, the flavors are ready, and the only one is going to take that top spot. My favorite thing about 5-Hour Energy is it gives you that boost with 0 sugar. So I get the pick-me-up, and I don't have that sugar crash later, and that's what I need for absolute certain. So all you got to do is get into the flavor of it, whether you want confetti craze or fruity rainbow, cotton candy, all of them. Make sure that you get what you're looking for. I personally consider a little bit of everything what I'm looking for. I like cotton candy, so that's probably what I'd pick today. That's why you want to be there, and that's probably where I'd put it, right at the top of the draft right now. You can do the same. Find your new flavor at 5-Hour Energy. Those shots are available only online at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon.
And if you haven't already, go check out the Everydayer Club. You can join us at lockedonchiefs.supercast.com, and you can get access to ad-free audio and our Everydayer Discord server. Talk to Ryan and I on a daily basis on Discord. All right, let's dive into it. Field standouts. Any guys that you saw that really stood out to you when it came to their field performances?
I gotta tell you, the linebackers are still running there, and we have some of the results in. So haven't seen him on.
If you're gonna mention linebackers, Sonny Styles at 6'5", does that shock you?
It did a little bit. I knew he was tall, but I didn't think he'd come in that tall. But that's not what shocks me the most about Sonny Styles. The best 10-yard on this day at 151. That is impressive. 43.5-inch vert. That is impressive. Sonny Styles is exactly where I was going to go. I'm looking at it live, and I'm not seeing him enough here as they're starting the on-field workouts. But just from the numbers, Sonny put himself in rare air here. The question is it enough for a position that has been, quite frankly, undervalued and demonetized, for lack of a better term? You can tell I look at YouTube a lot for that term coming out. But his performance on the measurements has just been incredible. 4.49 at 245 pounds. That is not something you can find every day.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with him. There's lots of different scenarios. We've actually done a mock draft where he was the best player available to the Chiefs at 9. And I know that people are going to be looking at that going, I get it. But at the same time, as you said, a position that doesn't seem to have the positional value as a defensive end or wide receiver or, running back or not running back, tackle or something like that, or corner. But there is nobody that you really think is going to be drafted at some of those positions in the top 10. So what the Chiefs are going to do is going to be something to watch. Who else stood out to you?
Well, his partner in crime is no slouch. Arvell Reese is right now tied for the best score on my board of any position. Arvell Reese came in. I know he lost to Sonny, but he came in at 4.53 at 241 pounds, 6'4", with a 1.56. So if you want to know why Ohio State was so successful, they had beef up front, Caden McDonald, and they had linebackers that are as fast as most slot receivers. And that's the difference. And so in a passing league that wants you to take on the run first and then start to be able to cover the middle ground against smaller, quicker receivers, these two linebackers in particular can do it all. And I do believe that Reese can line up as an edge solely and then come off the ball when you want to. I personally feel that Reese, especially after watching his film, and I haven't done all of it yet, probably only 5 games, but he is as good as a Swiss Army knife for Steve Spagnuolo as anybody's ever been, because he can rush the passer, he can play in coverage, he can play off ball, he can attack the inner gaps. I mean, he's what he wanted Dan Sorensen to be, and do a little bit of everything. And I think Arvell Reese could be really, really special, to tell you the truth. I hope it's in Kansas City, but I don't think that that's going to happen at this point. So I'll have more on the linebackers as we get through some of those other workouts. But other guys on field, we talked about Malachi Lawrence. He looked very, very good running as well. Overton, I thought, honestly surprised me. The Alabama guy, not super explosive, not the guy that's going to light it up in terms of testing, but I thought he looked good when he moved in the drills, and that's really important for him and where he's going to go, which I think is late day 2 in the third, and maybe coming down even a little bit less than that. We'll see if these numbers kind of halt him a little bit. I'll also say the defensive tackle, Grayson Halton, who I think is a pass rush only defensive tackle. I don't think his anchor is good enough to hold up against the run. He looked, quite frankly, not athletic when he ran his 40, but he's a defensive lineman. So what do I care, right? In all the drills, every single one of them, he looked explosive. He looked like he understood how to move around the bags. Some guys get to the bag drills and they're like, I don't know what to do. I just throw bodies around, right? So I thought that was encouraging for him. And also the fact that he came in, and I'm just trying to check his weight, 293 pounds with a 36.5-inch vert. So that shows you the explosion in the pass rush that you can get from a pass rushing defensive tackle that, yes, isn't a 3-down player, but there's a lot of non-3-down players in this draft class at DT. A lot of them are the nose tackle types that are going to come off the field on 3rd down. And so if you're going to have a 320, 340-pound NT that's going to stop the run, but he's got to come off the field because he can't get after the passer on 3rd, you got to have somebody to go in. And so Grayson Halton is that guy that you switch in for.
The interesting part about that, and I don't disagree with you, you're going to have somebody to switch in. But the interesting thing about that for the Chiefs is, generally speaking, they try to draft people that can do multiple things. And if you're talking about something specifically in that scenario, you're drafting 2 players basically to fill one position, because you have to go get a defensive tackle that can stop the run. And more than likely, if you get a guy that's going to be stopping the run, he isn't going to have the pass rush to be a 3rd down player. But they have all these defensive ends that they generally will go after that have the ability to break down inside. So it kind of works out okay to some extent. So it'll be interesting to see if Kansas City does anything there. Anybody else that you would like to throw out as a standout on day one?
I'm just double checking here. See, I thought both the Missouri guys held their own. Chris McClendon on the inside and Zion on the outside. I don't think they hurt themselves in any way, shape, or form. I would have liked to see Zion test because I think he's more explosive than his film always shows. So it looks like he's going to be bound for his pro day. So the Missouri Pro Day is going to have some revelations in it that are going to affect where guys land and what the order is that they come off the board. So just keep an eye on that. I'm not sure when the Missouri Pro Day is scheduled for, but we'll find that out.
Yep. So at this point, what are you looking for? I know we've talked about standouts. We talked about, some of the measurables, all of that. What are you looking for over the next couple of days? Because this is when the combine is going to happen. Obviously, you're probably watching this on Thursday or maybe late Thursday night or Friday. You still have all the other positional groups. Running backs are still out there, wide receivers, corners. I mean, everything's still out there basically other than defensive ends, defensive tackles, and linebackers, I think, for the most part. So at this point, what else are you looking for?
I really want to see the safety group. There's a lot of guys that are kind of in that vein that can do multiple
good free safeties
things. Yeah, you'd like to. Bud Clark's going to be one. I think Tinman can be, but they're going to tell you about how he can come down and play a little bit of corner and he can get in the box too. There's a number of guys that play those multiple roles like you were talking about. I'm really looking forward to that. That's probably the group that I'm most intrigued by. I feel like the offensive tackle group, I know who the athletes are. I know who the guys that fit what the Chiefs want to do. 2 of them play at Utah, just so y'all know. And I think that's a little bit less of a question mark, whereas I think the safeties in particular, to some degree, a little bit. McCoy didn't run or isn't going to run this whole time. He might be the first cornerback taken, but he didn't play at all last year coming off of an injury, and yet he's not going to participate in this event. So I think there are questions at corner too, but it feels a little bit more solidified. I'm looking for someone to step out and do something at the safety spot, whether it's Tinman or McNeil Warren, the kid from Toledo. Really intrigued to see him because I've had a hard time getting Toledo film. I need to see how he moves. So he's a guy that's high on my list, as well as Bud Clark. He's already on my list, though, so we're going to do fine there from TCU.
I'm going to be curious. One of the things that Veach mentioned that we didn't really talk too much about from his presser was that the fact that the NIL deals have really kind of changed the draft and changed the players coming out, when they come out, how they come out, and all of that. So that's going to be something to watch over the next couple of years to see how that process continues. Obviously, we're going to have you covered for the rest of getting ready for this 2026 season. We will be back on Monday to talk more about this, NFL Combine, getting the Chiefs ready, talking about what players stood out, and be sure to check that out. Ryan, any closing thoughts you want to throw out there?
I'm excited. It's a long weekend. I'm going to have the Matrix, some little drops for you of some guys that stand out, and then obviously we'll be putting the whole thing together. You can get it over at rogueapc.com, and you can get more information at NFL33.com, so check that out.
That's going to be it for us today. Thank you all for listening. We do truly appreciate it, and we will be back to cover and get you more information on everything that happened at the Combine. Thank you for listening again, and we will talk to you then.